everyone, welcome to the podcast. And this is co-host Tushar with Eugene. On this podcast, we will be discussing the approach to take towards various things in running as a sport, and we will also be discussing a couple of things that goes into actual coaching that we use to train an athlete. So that's about a quick podcast introduction, and I'll quickly give you my introduction, who am I and what I exactly do. So, being an athlete myself, I have been educating myself, researching and coaching in the endurance space, specifically into triathlons and running, and also some part of the fitness from past 5 to 6 years. And I have worked with athletes all around the globe. I specialize in the movement of the sport, and I have always believed that coaching is much, much more to do with just a training plan and the socialization aspect of it. So that's about my introduction, and I'll quickly hand it over to you, Eugene, to give you a quick introduction about yourself.
Thanks, Tusha. Hi, everyone. So my name is Eugene Lee from Singapore. And just to bring forward to the table, I come forward with close to more than 2 decades of experience coaching development athletes as well as performance athletes, both in triathlon as well as in endurance sport. Midway through my career, I've also ventured into the fitness industry, whereby primarily I'm now doing a lot of education and I focus a lot on the applied sense, whereby regardless of whether you're an athlete, educator, or someone who has an interest in endurance sport or movement, that's where I come in. So it's really exciting to see all of you here, and let's get started with the podcast. Okay, let's look at the next one. So Tusha, do you want to tell me your thoughts about overcoming obstacles, especially on the path towards your running goals?
Yeah, that's another good question to discuss about it, and it's very interesting to see how to overcome the obstacles that follows your running journey. There are quite a few challenges that we all face during our long distance running journey, and some of the common challenges to list are maybe the injuries, maybe the time constraints, and sometimes even a burnout in some cases. So let's talk about each of them quickly, like how they can be overcome while during on your running journey. So basically, to keep injuries away from you while during the running, being very impacted sport than compared to your cycling and swimming or any other sport, running has most proportion of getting more frequent injuries. So to get rid of this, you have to incorporate good amount of strength, good amount of mobility and flexibility workouts, and also incorporate different components of strength. What I mean by different components of strength is not you go to gym and you just do the basic strength training session. That's not enough. Okay, you have to go and be specific with the running movements. You have to go with the running specific strength. Then you have to go for the balance and coordination, neuromuscular development for your body, and these are the all things that you have to combine. And along with that, you also have to give it a more emphasis on your recovery portion that consists of your nutrition, sleep, whatever you do during the day after your running is also important to keep you away from the injuries. So it's all the holistic approach of your entire health, not just your running, because you are actually running to work on your health, right? And that is the main emphasis that you should be putting on, and that is how you will get rid of the injuries. Now let's come to the time constraint. So time constraint, I have seen many of the people have very much short on time these days, because obviously, like, they are working into 9 to 5 jobs, but these days jobs have been demanding a lot, and they have to extend their work hours like crazy. So I have seen some people like even working for 15 to 16 hours a day sometimes. So that's just crazy. So what I usually do with my athletes is like, whenever someone works with me, so I have a habit of asking them a series of questions, and I understand their lifestyle. So this also can be applied by you. So judge, ask yourself some questions that will actually give you the inputs on what is the time availability, what is the minimum time availability that you can devote to your running training. Okay, and then you can decide on your running goals. What that will do is that will not set some unrealistic goal, because see, if you only can devote 45 minutes per day for your running routine, and you are setting a goal of running a maybe marathon or ultra marathon, that's not realistic. And considering you are a beginner, that is not at all realistic, right? So it's like you need more time to be spent on your running training when you are going for the longer distances. It's not like you cannot do it with the lesser volume, but yes, 45 minutes for a marathon or maybe ultra marathon is not enough for a day. So that's one thing. So that is how you can tackle for the time constraint. You can also incorporate some of the workouts during your, whenever you have a free time. Let's say you have a lunch break, some people follow this. So you have a lunch break, that time you just get done with your workout, then go for lunch, or sometimes something like that. So you try to fit your workouts whenever in your day that you can do. Okay, it's just like sometimes some things come up, like you have a early morning meeting and you cannot go ahead and do your morning workout, then you just have to see what slot you can assign it during the day and go for doing your workout, finishing your workouts. Because having a meeting in the early morning is not a reason to skip your workout, right? That's not a correct reason to skip your workout, because that's what we are finding excuses to get rid of it. But rather the approach should be how I can fit it. But if you cannot fit it, that's okay, like then you get rid of it, like that workout is missed, and it is okay to completely go with that approach. Okay, so next comes is a burnout. Burnout is seen very in the runners who are actually very much following the volumetric training or high volumetric training. It's not for each and everyone, but high volume training is definitely for certain level of athletes. It's not for beginners. So if you are a beginner, then if you are keeping on doing the volume, increasing your mileage and not focusing on required strength and required movement abilities of your body, which is very much important in the initial stages, you are not focusing on the running drills, then you will just focus on your mileage of your running, which is given by your training plan, and then that will over the period is not going to show you any gains, or maybe even if it is show like, okay, I'm not saying like high volume will not give you the gains, but the chances of injuries without the strength training or the required basic components like the mobility or maybe the different other components will be more in terms of that approach. Okay, so what you need to do is you just keep on building the volume, and there is a burnout in another case also. So many of the people I have seen is doing keep on racing every every alternate weeks, or maybe even every month or every 2 months or something like that. But then what I feel is you are not focusing on your training, you are just focusing on running the events, and that is not why the events are meant for. Okay, so just focus on your training, go for a race once in a while, it is okay, you just go. And races are definitely there to keep you motivated. Races are not meant for you to take part because someone else is taking part from your circle and just go ahead and do it. Okay, so it's like that. And you will do the high volume, high number of races, and it's continuous boring routine that you are going to follow, and it is going to burn out at some point of time. So basically what I see is another point what I will say is, this is again I follow when I work with my athletes. I usually ask them to sit with me, brainstorm, and we usually plan their calendar for the entire year. But if that is not possible for you, because this sometimes is not possible for the recreational runners, this is a methodology mostly followed by the professional people. So what I will suggest is, what you can do is not plan entire year, but at least plan next 6 months. Okay, so for the next 6 months, how many races are you doing? There is one more concept which I am not going to talk about more now, but we will be delving into much deeper into some other podcast, like prioritizing your races, like A, B and C races and something. So prioritize your races, and that will give you much more clarity than how you train, how you should be trained, and basically how to avoid the burnout, because you have the clarity now to basically go ahead and you know what's on your plate for the next 6 months, and you are preparing for that. Okay, in between, if you have some races, you can definitely go for those, but treating them as a low priority races, because you have already set one major priority race within the 6 months or something like that. So this is how I will say that it will help you gain the clarity and also help you get rid of the burnout. Now these are some of the practical advices to be staying focused and also overcoming the obstacles. So these are my thoughts on it. So what do you think, Eugene, on this? Do you have any points to add?
That's great input, Tusha. I think one of my personal takeaways from your what you just mentioned was really about prioritizing races. This is one common thing we see within the community, is that sometimes many athletes tend to get very excited, and they end up signing up for every race that takes them through every single weekend. And they reach a point that if they don't actually get burnt out, they're actually overwhelmed by the number of races, which can be quite daunting, because it's not just a race they're taking part in, it's also the logistics, the travel, the adrenaline, and all the things they need to arrange leading up to a race. So that can actually be pretty stressful as well. So I think that's a very good insight from you. I think really to be able to manage all this requires a lot of consideration. And as you also mentioned, with busy corporate guys especially, who already have a lot on their plate, where they have a big job to manage, family and other commitments, having running and to manage running itself is just another thing to put stress on. So again, this is very personal thoughts. I think for those of you out there who obviously are in this case, one of the ways I think which you can look at to help you would be to get help. And this help could be as simple as working to manage your run activities within a group or squad or even a club format. Okay, and if you take it one notch or higher, I think working with a coach is going to really bring in more time management skills, because the coach is probably going to be able to help advise you what is the best way moving forward. So there you go. That's one of the great points. If you do decide to work with a coach, that's going to help you manage these obstacles.
Okay, so let's come to our next question and the next discussion. So, what are your thoughts, Eugene, that what is the psychology of the goal setting in running? What do you think about it?
That's a good one, Tusha. I think when it comes to psychology, it's actually a very, very huge topic. So fortunately, we're just going to try to stick to the part on goal setting. So, in my opinion, I think we've already talked a lot about goal setting, the process of goal setting, and how to do goal setting. When we now look at the psychology of it, I think it's very interesting. And first, it's very important as well to understand about self-efficacy. So, self-efficacy is, in simple words, I would just term it as self-belief. Now, it's very interesting how us as humans, this self-efficacy or self-belief can actually vary depending on the situation, environment, and even possibly during different periods of time. Now, I'll give you a very simple example of how self-efficacy can actually be applied, not just in running, but even in everyday tasks. Now, it's very interesting that when you give a simple task to anyone, and if it's easily achievable, and the person is able to complete the task easily, you actually realize that his self-confidence improves. Now, with time and space, as you slowly increase the difficulty of the task, and with the same person being able to progressively complete the task with that progression, you also realize that self-confidence improves. Now, on the contrary, when we set a task which is too difficult, and if someone attempts it and he fails on the first time, and then attempts it again, he fails, there is actually a detrimental effect. And this actually affects the person because he feels that he doesn't have the self-confidence, and actually his self-confidence starts dropping with more tries. Now, how is this important to us in running or whatsoever? I think it's important because we need to really consider self-efficacy as part of the entire process. Now, when we set our goals, we talk a lot about goals, and we set a goal, and let's give ourselves a very simple one. If I set myself a goal of being able to complete 5 kilometers, I didn't really put a time, just 5 kilometers. All I wanted to do is complete 5 kilometers. And I'm the very first time running 5K. And once I start running and I complete the task, regardless of time, I would say, hey, that's achievable because I am able to run 5 kilometers continuously without stopping. So I would definitely feel more confident. And so what the next step is I probably want to set myself a time. And this is where the tricky part comes in. When we put time and running in, that's where there's obviously a challenge. But the problem lies when you set a goal, which is of course important to challenge yourself, but if it beyond reach and with a number of tries, if that runner doesn't achieve that time, you will be assured that his self-confidence starts to drop. And Tusha just talked about burnout as well. So burnout, don't forget, is not just physical, it's also psychological. When someone keeps trying and trying the same task and is not able to achieve it, or even as a result starts to backfire and get slower and slower, it's also a combination of psychological burnout with physical burnout all in, and at the same time self-efficacy goes out the door. Hence, how do we actually manage this? It goes back down to goal setting. So it's important again to really look deeply into SMART goals, because the SMART goals are going to help you really set goals that are achievable, specific, right? And that's the whole idea of doing so. Now, another concept I just want to talk about is about goal orientation. And this again ties in very clearly and very closely with self-efficacy. So in the previous part, we spoke about setting goals. Now, if your goal tends to be too easy, well, there's no harm. You achieve it, you're very happy about it, and you say, okay, let's try the next one. And so the ability to set goals is whereby firstly you want it to challenge yourself, but at the same time it's very, very important to be able to know that it's actually realistic. Okay, and as I mentioned, just what I was saying a couple of minutes ago, if that goal tends to just be too difficult and you start failing and not be able to achieve them, it's definitely going to affect your self-efficacy. Hence, that said, again, no one gets things right entirely on the first try. And so, even with your goals, and if you realize that, hey, maybe the goal I've set is too tough, and it's not because of your discipline or determination, it could be also other factors that affect it, example, your environment, your job, or your family, then it's time to step in and say, yes, I did set a goal, but now it's time for me to manage expectations, and it is perfectly fine to reorientate your goal and so that you can make it more realistic and even more achievable. Okay. Now, the last thing as well, apart from self-efficacy and goal orientation, would be intrinsic motivation. So, just a quick recap. We spoke about this again higher up in this podcast. Intrinsic motivation sits from within. So, whatever you want to do, whether it's running every day or running better times or trying to lose weight, it's all from within. So, there's a deep burning desire and passion about being able to get out and do what you want to do for running. Now, I'm not going to start talking about intrinsic motivation again on how you're going to achieve it because, as I said, it's intrinsic. But on the contrary, let's now look at what happens when intrinsic motivation starts to go on a decline. Now, this is where runners will then start asking themselves, why am I even doing this? Or if I wake up in the morning and I dread getting out, it's like, oh man, why have I been doing this? Or even when training, you start asking yourself, oh, this is just ridiculous. I don't see a point of doing this. I don't just dread it. I totally despise it. And then you need to take a step back really and ask yourself, well, what caused this? And you'll be surprised that this decline again in intrinsic motivation, which is also usually correlated to your passion about running, is usually caused over time, and it can and usually is affected and influenced by the goals that you have set or not set, as well as your own self-efficacy. And again, it's really situational as well because there are many things going around your life. Again, could be your job, could be your family, and other commitments. So now, having understand this tree, and what we just covered in the last couple of minutes was we talked about the concepts of self-efficacy, goal orientation, and intrinsic motivation. Let's try to really quickly look at the impact of or the likelihood of achieving one's running goals. So when you now set a goal, I have a personal hack that I work with all athletes. Is that when we set a goal, we go through the SMART process, and once we've determined a goal, we pen it down. Now, we might also want to take into consideration and give ourselves a buffer in case we don't have the ability to achieve that goal. What would be the next alternative? How much lesser or how much easier would the goal then be modified to? We might even openly talk about that. Okay. On the other spectrum as well, when we set a goal, it's also good to have what we call a stretch goal. And a stretch goal is really trying to push the limit within that time space. And just as an example, let's say if I have a goal that I set of running 5 kilometers in 30 minutes, okay, and I actually achieve it before the first half of the year. If I had a stretch goal, I might put another one that instead of just only running 5K in 30 minutes, I might want to try to run 5 kilometers under 28 minutes. So that's a stretch goal. And after that, I try and keep trying until the end of the year. And I never really get down to running under 28 minutes. But that's fine because you've already actually achieved the goal for the year, which is running 5 kilometers for 30 minutes. But you miss your stretch goal. So it doesn't really matter. That stretch goal could actually in turn be recycled, and that could be actually your new goal for 2024. Okay. So that's all. I think it's important. I mean, I'm really coming from an applied perspective of the psychology of goal setting. It's very important again for us to understand, especially for many of you out there who are listening to this, is that again, we don't have the privilege or time and space like a professional athlete. And so it's very important to take into consideration all these factors together with the advice from your coach, different insight, and that's how I think we can move forward. What do you think, Tusha?
Yeah, so I think that was almost major points almost covered by Eugene, and quite a good insights I felt around this discussion that I think very important and the point that I made from the Eugene's discussion here is having the buffer time. So having the buffer time is very much important when you are setting some goal. I think he also talked about a stretched goal. So if you reach your goal early in the plan, and then what next? So it's just you have to have a backup plan ready. Okay, so that's called a backup plan in your normal layman's term, or maybe a buffer plan or buffer time, something kind of it. And it's very much important. What I think is psychology of goal setting is very much important into running, especially in when you are coming as a beginner into running. You have to learn about more and more about it, because everything starts from your intent and goal setting. What goes into your training, what goes into your running, it all is the impact of what goals are you setting for your running. If your goal is not really up to the mark, or maybe I won't say up to the mark is not a correct word, but if your goal is not set according to the SMART standards, or if it is not a realistic one, then you will be definitely going to be suffering burnout or time constraints that we discussed in the last part of this podcast. And definitely it starts to demotivate you by losing your confidence, as Eugene discussed. And that is very much important, because what I think is everything is interrelated. Okay, as you set the goals, that will make you much more disciplined to have a training plan. If you are going to be disciplined, you will stick to your training plan, and that is nothing but taking the action towards your goal. Each day you take some action. It's not like you have some running workouts of, let's say, 60 minutes and you are able to do today only 30 minutes. That's okay sometimes, okay, but then at least you are doing something towards that goal. You are getting out of bed and you are doing something. So that's what is counted, right? It's not what is written in the training plan exact 100% that you need to do. That's not like expected. So it's just about that. Stick to 80% of your training plan, and that is counted as taking action. Now these action on the consistent basis will definitely show up and give you the results. Okay, it's the process. If you take action, you will get results, and that is how you get motivation. Okay, and that is the process to get a motivation. But then another point that Eugene talked about is like intrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation definitely comes from within, but you also have to maintain that intrinsic motivation throughout your running journey. Because sometimes there are bad days where you will feel like, okay, what I'm doing, and I am of no ability, I cannot do this workouts, I cannot, I just failed in your workout. But then that time it will help you to basically understand you that this is my intent, I am okay to fail, but I am learning out of this failure and I'm going to implement it further. And that is how your intrinsic motivation is going to be maintained, right? So I think the psychology of setting the goal is very much important topic, and very much what I will say is undervalued topic as well for the running community, which actually is not being emphasized too much, but it is definitely very much important. So yeah, with that, I think that's all about my thoughts on psychology of goal setting for running.
And so, as a conclusion, we covered the different various obstacles that you may face in your running journey. Do remember, any point of time, it always helps when you take a step back to reflect on this to help you overcome and moving forward. In addition to this, we also covered the psychology of goal setting. And once again, it's very important for you to really go through the entire process, which will then be able to help you achieve the necessary success. Once again, do leave a comment if you have any questions. We'll be most happy to have them answered. And if you think that someone else can benefit from this podcast, please go ahead and share this. And in our next podcast, we will be exploring goal setting for different types of runners. It's going to be an exciting one. And at the same time, Tusha is going to really dive deep into looking at balancing the lifestyle around running. And it's going to be done in an Indian context.
If you are in Pune, then do check out my face-to-face services. And if you are in any other parts of India, I do have online options too. My services are primarily based on a skill building approach, more of a technique oriented, sport specific strength training, mentorship and coaching, everything else that you can check out. I'll do drop a link in the description box. Go ahead and check the available services option that interest you. And let's catch up on the next one.